Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have time to talk to you this week. Should have tried to. But, yeah.
We'll do let's do lunch in Bangkok. Lunch date. And you know the places, so that'd be perfect. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Wonder if they transcribed that or a little political
Yeah,
discussion.
I hope not. I hope not. Well, I don't think so. I was looking over there. I think it just started like 5 minutes before. And it's about time. We should probably get going. I'm gonna let you start it off when you're ready.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll just look for the slides over there.
But you're sleepy, so it's all good. Sleepy or grumpy. I didn't think about that. Ja, also so mit dem, was die am Hotel am Kurs gezogen haben. So in a hotel, one of the machines supposedly gave coffee without milk, the other milk without coffee.
Yeah, that's.
Why would you put milk into coffee? I don't know. I was trying to explain that to some people.
We'll just go to one machine first and then to the next. Okay, I guess we can get started. Welcome to PIM Working Group. I'm glad to see you all made it here on a Friday. We have an exciting session coming up. Lots of cool stuff. So here's a note. Well, I hope you have seen it many times this week. You should all be aware of this. It's about how we should conduct ourselves and so on in the IETF and in meetings. Okay, next slide. Here's our agenda. So one big thing that might surprise some of you is that we want to do rechartering. We'll get to why shortly. Nothing too big, I hope. Then we have several presentations here. Any comments on the agenda? Okay.
No, just wanted to say thanks to Brian for the 11-12 feedback, because and I think when you close this or so, I'll upload another revision with his fixes.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right. So here's the working group status. So we have these three BIS drafts to progress IGMP v3 and MLD v2 to internet standard. And yeah, thanks a lot to Brian for working on those. They're all approved and everything, just waiting for the RFC editor. And then we have RFC 1112 BIS that Torles just mentioned. So that's also related to this progression. Basically, the host, the RFC, this explaining the host behavior for multicast was based on IGMP version 1, no mention of later IGMP or no mention of IPv6. So that's in this new version. We just had a working group last call and we only got one response. So it would be great if some of you can have a look. If you just want to say it's fine, that's okay. But yeah, great if you at least have a quick look at it. All right. Yeah, Mike and I will have to figure out if we feel like we have enough responses, but it's not easy if you have only one response. Okay. We have the DR improvement draft. We need to do some more work on that at some point. And also the backup DR that is on this agenda. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Prasad. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, a bit late to raise my hand on the agenda part. Basically, I mean, observation, not a question. There are a couple of Lisp multicast documents. I don't know if the agenda should explicitly say that we should review them or something like that. But if it's not needed, no problem.
Okay, sure. Yeah, let me mention that. So they were presented by Dino the last PIM meeting. Basically, there are some 3 RFCs in the Lisp working group that have to do with multicast over Lisp, and they are being progressed from experimental to proposed standard. And it would be great if you can help review those documents. Dino presented them here last IETF. Guess we can try to cross-post any last calls or ask Dino to post to PIM mailing list. But yeah, the Lisp working group, they focus on the Lisp part, so they need us to help with the multicasts. Okay, then we have some drafts that we requested publication for that are awaiting rechartering. So we'll explain about the rechartering shortly once I'm through the list here. PIM Lite, we requested publication. That probably does not have to wait for the rechartering, but we'll see. Also, the joint prune extensions for Lisp, the MOFRs. We have a lot of drafts we requested publication for. So we've been pretty productive. Then we have a few drafts that are not discussed this meeting. Next slide. Also, this discovery, or what I should call them, drafts are not presented here. Well, the zero conf assignment is on the agenda. And then we have the proxy and some PFM forwarding enhancements on the agenda. Yeah, okay. So that hopefully covered all the working group drafts. So then I think we can talk about rechartering.
Yeah, you can see that. Oh, there we go. Okay, so our intention is to hopefully have this happen pretty quickly. I mean, if we can, we've had this discussed it on that mailing list for a couple weeks now. I think we'll do a 2-week working group last call, like maybe even starting this weekend. And then we want to get going on getting this completed so that we can advance some drafts that are kind of being held off on this. We've been working on a charter update for a couple years. We just kind of stalled doing it. We were wanting to recharter because of the segment routing related point to multipoint work that we've adopted in PIM in agreement with Spring. And the chairs and the ADs were all in agreement to add this to our charter and add this work. So there's no controversy there at all. But I think it's with the advent of maybe a new ITF chair. I'm not sure, but we do have some people in the IC looking at our charters really closely, and they feel like some of the drafts don't quite fit. So we need to get this explicitly listed so that we can advance some drafts that we have. So this, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this. You can look it up real quick if you want. Just type in PIM IETF charter to see what it currently is. But what I think, and I think I got it all here, is in red, we have what we propose as being changed to the charter. And again, this is what was sent on the list and has been discussed. Every comment to date has been added to the charter. So let's just real quickly go through it. The very opening paragraph, we just simply made it a little bit more explicit to say charter to maintain, improve, and add extensions to PIM. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. So basically the way they read the old charter was that we were only allowed to work on what it was in the bulleted list. So now we are trying to add this first change there to explain that we want to work on, additions or whatever to PIM and IGMP and so on, not just that list.
Okay, let me just finish just talking about this quick, and we have people in the queue. We'll let you go. We'll let you go here shortly. So we just kind of made that more clear in the first paragraph that this is what we're chartered to do for these protocols, PIM, IGMP, and MLTP. And then we added bullet 2 with regards to the segment routing drafts that we've been wanting to do for a couple years now. We added one with regards to making any work on distribution trees and Lisp environments explicit, since we've already been working on that. Bullet 5, we added that specifically because of a MOFRR draft that we have. And number 6, we have group address allocation protocols that we're working on. And Nathan we're not going to the list yet, but there's already a nice queue going on, by the way. There's 3 people in front of you. And then 7, there's experience document, because we do have this experience document that we are working on. And then we modified that. I think these were Tortoise's suggestions on the bottom, just kind of making it, more explicit with regards to adopting any new work would have to have a recharter. And that last paragraph a little bit more explicitly as well. And do you have a comment before you get to override the queue if you want? So go ahead.
I don't know. I was just being polite.
Yeah. So I think we're at a point where let's go.
Okay. No. So just to reflect what from the IG perspective, how they were reading it. So you should actually put the word "the working group will also work on the following items." The word "also" is new. Also, is actually a new word.
Oh yeah,
So if you look into the old charter, it says like
that's true.
So it says like we will work on multicast stuff, and then it's like the working group will work on these 4 items only.
Yeah, that's true.
And then what is below this, like anything else outside of these 4 items, is actually outside of the scope, and we have to do a recharter. So anything red here was actually completely out. So basically, anything the PIM work, if you read it very formally, okay, the PIM working has been working upon for the last couple of years was out of charter. So anyway, so we're gonna fix that now. It's gonna,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure, it will go. I hope it will go reasonably. Famous last words. Huh? That will go rather smooth because this thing will. Yeah. Yeah, so it should go fine, I think.
So a working group last call is the appropriate way to do this, right? For a charter, that's what our plan is.
No, so the way actually it works is I have this magical button like recharter, and in that magical button, there will be like that will trigger like a recharter, shorter review proposal for the ISG. So then they will review this thing for being made public, and then based upon that, the working group last call, something like that.
Should we do a working group last call or not?
Yeah, but it's maybe too soon right now.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually, come up with a proposal first, what you think actually is okay, then ship it over to me. I'll press some buttons left, right, and center. Then it will be reviewed by the IESG, that it's going to be like okay, and then then we can publish this thing.
Yeah, I feel like it might be good to have a few days where the working group can have the chance to.
We'll work it out. I'm still, this is the first recharter I'm doing, so I'm like new in the thing.
But at least if you are listening to this and you feel like something should be changed, please let us know as soon
it's
as
1,000 times
possible.
better than it was before.
Yeah.
So
I also want to say the main thing here is at least we're trying to just add what we need for the current documents. And if you have like new topics you feel like should be here, we can discuss changing the charter further later.
So in general, updating a charter should not be a heavy lift kind of a work. So this should not take like big crazy amount of times. I'm also pretty sure that the people who wish read the charter, if we give them like a rechartering thing, then they're not gonna oppose this because then I'm gonna say like, yeah, but come on guys, you ask me to recharter and now you block it.
Thanks, Nate.
Hi, Nate Karsten. So one of the things in one of my presentations today is that there isn't really a good home for multicast snooping. So it may be worth throwing that in here as well. I know you said you wanted to cover existing work, but it's kind of this weird thing because it's layer 2 is owned by IEEE, layer 3 is owned by this group to some degree. So
That's a good point.
and the document out there is currently describes IGMP snooping, which doesn't cover IPv6 at all. So that in and of itself might be worth looking at some point. So
Right, we have a working group document on like IGMP MLD proxy, so that's layer 2. But yeah.
Thanks.
I wonder if our existing like IGMP and MLD description in the first paragraph is enough. Maintaining, improving, adding, extent. Actually, we probably should add snooping.
On Kamna Misra, Cisco systems. So this second point, segment routing, is it for SR and SR v6 both?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, someone mentioned a list that we didn't, I think it was Greg, that we didn't need to explicitly say SRv6, so that makes sense.
So, Talsekert, I'm not that much worried as Nate on the IGMP snooping because it has IGMP in the name, but we were yesterday brainstorming, and the one protocol I can't for the heck of it come up with the name was from the switches to the routers to stop it forwarding traffic that's not needed. And I do remember that we had a proposal also in the IETF, and I think it wasn't called IGMP, right? So maybe one of the tricks is whatever logically is an extension, this would nicely be a logical extension. We just have to call it something IGMP, MLD, or PIM to have it pass the charter, or somebody comes up with a nice term for that. Improve and add extensions to the realm of PIM, IGMP, and MLD, right? So that we have more freedom with the names. On the other hand, I didn't like MLD as a change in name anyhow, but so yeah, as long as we call it IGMP or MLD, I think we'll be fine. Otherwise, maybe a little bit more flexibility on that sentence.
Are you suggesting that maybe we don't need to include snooping then?
So, I mean, I
'Cause I
think
don't-
we can do that explicitly, except then that some pencil pusher will ask us what we did if we decide not to do something. So that's always the problem of explicit items for which we're just pondering and haven't decided. So.
Yeah, Gunter here again, speaking as an AD. So you also have the option of doing this in two steps, to do like a rechartering first to help you with the pending drafts, and then work on a more cleaned up version, more future proof on, in a later time. So it's not a possibility.
Okay. Human?
Human calling Nokia. Should we worry about OEM stuff here specifically? I don't see anything on OEM. No, we did it here.
At least some OEM related stuff has been done in MBOND, so it's a little unclear where it should go. I feel it it depends.
Yeah, I specifically want to make sure we don't fall into a trap for the OEM point to multipoint stuff that is in
Oh, yeah.
PIM, right?
Good point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So one more thing, process perspective. I just checked with my fellow, ADs. They say like doing the working group last call of the charter before shipping it off to me.
Okay.
So what about the EVP and multicast related stuff? They already have a couple of RFCs, OISM and IGMP, the EVP and 9251 or something like that. Those are two RFCs that they have multicast related. Would that be now within the charter of, or?
No, there's actually several working groups working on multicast related work,
Okay.
and we don't get involved. I think we have like on the bottom here it says like open to support review discussions for multicast related work from other working groups. We're here to offer expertise to other working groups as they need it, but I don't see there being any need, unless you do, that we need to add anything about EVPN in here because they're doing their own thing.
Yeah, we can add it later if we need to, but yeah, this sort of like other working groups might ask for help in a way, like with the point to multipoint stuff, for instance. Some of it might have been done in spring, but they felt like they didn't have the multicast expertise. So I think we have to take those on a case by case basis.
Thank you. And Prasad?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Prasad, Cisco Systems. So a couple of comments. One is the MSDP Anycast RP. Do we want to add that here? I mean, not that I'm saying that I have a proposal for MSDP or Anycast RP, but that at least was part of the multicast suite.
Yeah, I would say let's add it later if we see a need.
Okay.
There is some, yeah, MSDP is a bit special. There might be some resistance to doing new work with MSDP. We'll see.
Sure. Sure. And then one question on the seventh bullet. I mean, I understand that the protocol lessons learned draft and similar drafts, I mean, I'm just bringing it as an example, are part of that. But is it the deployment angle also that we are considering here when you say design experience? Is it the network design we are talking about, or just the
Just protocol, and it's specifically because we have a draft right now that's getting into experience and history
Okay.
of certain protocols, multicast protocols.
Okay.
I think if
Okay.
we added deployment, we would be stepping on work that's going on in MBOND because they have a
Okay.
symbol, they have a similar part of their charter. So we're just specifically working on protocol specific experience
Thank you.
information.
Thank you.
Good question. Anything else? Yeah, he's on.
Yusuf from China Mobile. I wonder how with the new multicast protocol for the processes of that, because we as I have submitted a new draft of about the MSR6 in the PIM group.
Oh,
Can we discuss this technology here and until the I see the charter until the adoption we are just to decide whether it is in the group. Is that correct?
So Gunther here speaking, as an AD. So this is the MSR6 stuff, correct? Yeah. So there was a bug on that actually ended up not so good, and that is no longer followed from that perspective. So it should not be here.
yeah. I think we probably get many different opinions on that one. I've tried to distance myself a bit from that because I was kind of involved. But it is if we're touching other working groups work like beer, for instance, and others, that work should be done there. But if there's new proposals that have to do with multicast, um, this is the place to address those kind of things, as long as they don't involve protocols from other working groups, I guess. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I would say at least, our focus should be on what we have in the charter. But if we have time available, then we are usually open to for people presenting things related to multicast. But yeah, at least this case in particular, it's not something that we can, do as work items at the moment, I would say. But if you have time, we can, maybe discuss it a little bit.
Anything else? If not, then let's go on to their agenda. Usually save new drafts to the end, but we're gonna have Sandy go. This is Flex. I'll go.
A tough week, right? Happy to see you all here. So, this is Sandy. This presentation is for multi-topology in PIM, and I presented this draft on behalf of our co-author, Benchong, Stig, Jeffrey, and Holman. Next, please. This draft has been presented in last meeting, and in last meeting we found that there is a gap between the FC 9350, that is flex algorithm based draft, and this draft. So we find some solution to fill the gap, such as the soft data plan. And also we found that the FC 9502 can be used also in different deployment. So we added the two reference draft in this document. And also we updated the PIM extensions to align with the modification. And also we improve the description for better reading. And thanks for the help from Les and Peter. Much appreciated for your help. Next, please. So this is the introduction of this draft. We know that this draft wanted to define the PIM message extensions to provide a way to build the multicast tree through the combination of TAD instead of the shortest path. What's TAD? TAD means topology, algorithm, and data plane. So all the routers on a given PIM multicast tree must participate in the same TAD. So we know that before using the method defined in this document, we must make every routers advertise the participation of flex eagles and the associated data plane. So if we'd like to use the soft data plane, we can use the prefix of multicast sources advertised as in the default topology. And if we'd like to use the IP data plane defined in FC 9502, we can also use the prefix of multicast sources advertised with associated flex eagles. So the soft data plane draft has been presented in LSR meeting yesterday. So maybe you have some remember on it. So after we advertise the participation of the data plane, we can use the method defined in this draft. So the first half router can advertise the TAD sub-DOV, which associated with the group source info TOV in the PFM function. Sorry, there is a typo. Please ignore it. And the last hop router and the routers along the path can get the upstream router from different TADs routing calculation and send the PIM join message with TAD attribute to build the path. So, next. So this is the format of the PIM extensions. Compared to the last version, we add the data plane ID in the group source info TAD sub-TOV and the PIM join proom TAD attribute. So this DPID is used for distinguish the different data plane. So we can use this for soft plane or IP flex eagle. Yeah. Next, please. So this is an example. And we know that if we use the shortest path in the figure, we can only get one path for the two multicast flows because the two multicast flows has the same source and the receiver. So there is only one path can be used to deliver the multicast flows. But if the bandwidth is not enough for the two flows, packet loss will occur. So if we'd like to use a function defined in this document, at first, we must advertise the node participation for TAD, for data plane. So we can use the soft data plane for example, if we want to use soft data plane, we can let every prefix of multicast source is advertised in the default topology. That means the prefix is advertised as yo-yo. And after that, we can use let the first the FHR, that means the R1 in this figure, to send the group info, group source info TOV associated with the TAD sub TOV. So in the PFM function. So every routers in the figure can get the information. And for the last hop router, that means R6 in this figure, it will use the associated TAD to look for the unicast route from the associated flex A algorithm and get the right upstream hop So every routers, such as R2, R4, R3, and R5, will use the same function to build the multicast tree. So at last, we can get two different paths for the two different multicast flows forwarding. So there is no packet loss occur. Yeah. Next. So that's all the draft, and we welcome more comments and review. And we'd like to know if this draft can be adopted. Thank you. Any comments?
So with regards to that second bullet point, the LSR working group, they're aware of this draft, and you've included the references to two drafts in this draft.
Yeah.
Are they are they happy with?
Yeah.
I mean, would they expect this not to be worked on in LSR? Is
Yes.
they would be
one draft is RFC already, right? And then the other one will be adopted in the LSR working group.
okay.
And yesterday we get a consensus about the solution. Yeah, in LSR working group. Yeah.
So they wouldn't expect to be working on this draft in that. In
Yeah.
they would not. They would not. They would not work on this draft in LSR.
LSR will work on the soft plane.
Yeah,
soft data plane. Yeah. So all the work is under the working group. I think agreement. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Peter Pshenak, Cisco. So I just want to add, this work has two pieces. One is IGP specific, or algo flex algo specific, which is happening in the LSR. It has been done for the purpose of this draft actually, but I think this is a multicast work which should happen here, and we'll take care of the other one. But we are coordinating.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Tall second. I'm just curious, and I think we should take it offline. I'd love to learn how in unicast traffic for different topologies is basically put onto that topology, right? So outside of SR and MPLS, if there is it even anything for basic IP traffic, because I remember when we tried to do that, well, now maybe 20 years ago or so, that was really painful, and that was one of the reasons why the equivalent for multicast wasn't adopted. So I want to just see. I love the idea, right? I'm just a little bit worried if we have something that only works for multicast, right? How we make it best stick.
So Peter Francisco, let me respond. This is not used for multicast. It will not for unicast. It will not work for unicast. So this is tailored for application which build their own forwarding state independently based on the data that we give them.
But so let's say, for example, I have an IPTV application that wants to have resilience. It has both unicast and multicast traffic, right? And you also want to be able for the unicast traffic to have resilience, right? So how would you do that part?
So you can use any of the existing data planes, and you can even use the same algo for it. So if you, for example, have an SR, you can use SR to forward it along the same topology using unicast, and you can use the soft data plane to use it for multicast.
Yeah, so I mean, it's clear to me that with SR you can do it, right? So we don't have a fitting data plane without SR.
All right, there are existing data planes that you can use with Flex Algo, which are SR, SRv6, and IP Flex Algo. So we have three. We are defining the fourth one, which is not a real data plane, but can be used for multicast and other applications.
Which is IP Flex? Do I find a draft IP Flex data plane or?
So IP Flex data plane is for prefixes which are advertised as an algo-specific prefixes.
That's FC 9502. Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a adoption call going on right now. So we'll just let it run for a second here. You can see it going on. We'll take it to the list, and I may email the LSR chairs just to officially have it on record, like we did with Spring, just to make sure. Yeah.
Just me, speaking as an idea again here. So no issues with adoption call at all, but maybe after the recharter, please.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think, I don't know, we may have to, see if they are adopting it in LSR. I mean, that other draft, right? because we need that to move forward with this.
It's Peter Francisco here again. And we are doing this mostly for you, so we don't want to create the circular dependency that you're waiting for us and we're waiting for you.
Right, right, sure. Yeah, no, we can certainly do the adoption call without waiting for LSR. But yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Yeah, so we have
Thank you.
8 yes and 4 no opinion, and we will move on to Mankamana. All right. PFM first, forwarding, enhancements.
No, this is the
Which one?
the extension, PFM extension.
This one.
Yeah.
This one, enhancements, or another one?
No, this.
IGMP MLD multipath.
I'm a little confused. Okay, that one. Yeah.
This one.
The
Oh, this one.
EVPN. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to present PFMSD extension for EVPN multi-homing. We can go to the next slide. So very first question comes into the mind that why even this is the use case, where exactly we are going to use this. So I am describing two use cases here, and both are from mostly from the best working group, EVPN related work. So the left hand side of the picture, it shows layer 2 multi-homing where you have a layer 2 domain which is interconnecting with layer 3 domain, and you can have IRB in those routers 1, 2, 3, 4. That is one of the use case. It is well defined in 7432. The second is you may have end-to-end layer 3 domain, and we may have a layer 3 multi-homing, all active multi-homing. That is a new work being done in best working group. So these are the two use cases which actually creates a requirement here. Can we go to the next slide? So why these draft in the BES are bringing requirement for PIM, and is it something which PIM has to do or somewhere else this has to be solved? So if we look at this simple example, if I'm doing multi-homing and I have same subnet which is present at router 1 and router 2, which is 10.110/24, and everything on the top of router 1 is layer 3. So what is going to happen in the IGP reachability? S1 and S2, which are spine or any of the PE boxes, they are going to see both of the router as a next hop for this prefix. So if PIM join reaches to S2, it is going to see ECMP path. And since it is so, it could be ECMP or UCMP depending on what kind of topology you have. But if you have ECMP, nothing prevents S2 to send its join to router 2, because router 2 is also advertising the same prefix. On the other hand, when we are started sending the multicast traffic from the source, it is a port channel, and port channel has two member link. At this point of time, switch has to make a decision that which port traffic has to go on, and nothing prevents this switch to pick left hand side of the port. So traffic goes to router 1. The end result is we have traffic on router 1, we have join sitting on 2. So receiver is never going to get the traffic. Next slide. So now the question is why PIM should solve something which is being posed by EVPN multi-homing. So truly speaking, if we look at this as a whole network, EVPN has no role to play in the upper side of the network. So EVPN is terminated right here at 1 and 2. And the whole advertisement process or the information about reachability, it is of any of the layer 3 protocol. One can potentially say that can we do something with IGP, but IGP cannot really carry any information associated with per flow. So the next best choice we have is doing extension to existing procedure in PIM. And the existing procedure in PIM is PIM flooding mechanism for source and group mapping. And that is what we are going to use. Next slide. So if we look at just a requirement that we have to have a way where S1, S2 can really know that where exactly the source is active. That is number one. And the second thing is, if we are using flood mechanism, this whole PIM domain could be really big. This information is not needed in the rest of the world. This information is useful only at the point where you really have to make a decision between whether to pick one or whether to pick two. So these are the kind of high level requirement, but as we move forward, if working group thinks that there are some more requirements which needs to be handled for this case, they can be added later. Next. So how exactly this draft is solving this problem is, initially when you have, if multicast source is not active, we cannot really spread that information where the source is going to be active. It is not possible to know. So initially, PIM, if PIM control plane is coming up first, PIM is going to build tree as it does today. But as soon as your multicast source starts sending traffic, and if source is active, now at this point of time we are going to use a PFM to flood the source and group info. Now to remember that the initial PFM was defined only for ASM, not for SSM. But in this case we have to do flooding even for SSM cases. So as soon as source is active, we are going to advertise, or we will start flooding the information, so that S1 and S2 both are aware that this particular SG is active in one, so that it can change its RPF accordingly. Next. So next step is getting feedback from the working group. Current draft just says about flooding mechanism. There is an we have worked on one algorithm. We are trying to simplify how to prevent the flood in the whole domain, how to restrict it within the boundary of where that information is really needed. So that will be the next step which we are going to add in the draft. Next. Any question?
Nils Wanke, DT. Mankana, this reminds me a lot about the issue that we've solved with MOFR on the uplink trunks. Could that be the same the same procedure that could be feasible for this issue as well? Because if you go back to the slides, the topmost two routers, S1 and S2, if they request via MOFR the both streams from the upstream router, then you basically have the information available via both links.
So that will require another protocol extension, because in this case 1 and 2, just consider that 1 and 2 are multi-home, 3 and 4 are LAN. And between multi-homing and LAN, S1 and S2 will have no way to differentiate whether it is because of my ECMP path is because of multi-homing or it is because of LAN segment. In the LAN case, you don't want to do two join. Only in case of multi-homing, MOFRR way you can do.
Okay, then we need a different mechanism here.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can go to
Has
the
this
that one.
has this been discussed on the list at all?
I have this draft is present there for some time now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have we discussed it on the list? You know?
I think once we had presented in maybe year ago, and that's when the question came that do we really want to solve this in PIM, whether
Oh,
it
yeah,
should be solved in EVPN land itself.
Okay.
So I wanted to cover that part, that why EVPN cannot solve this.
Okay. Which one is this next one now, Steve?
It's backup DR. Yeah, that would be a short update.
I don't know if we have a backup DR one. PFM enhancements. Flex algo. See it there. Do you see it there? Yeah.
I only saw slides from this one. Oh no, I sent both slides.
Hold on just a second.
Otherwise, others can go while
Otherwise, what?
others can go while you.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But let me just see if we can.
Yeah, I don't see it.
It's not on there. And it's not going to show up now, but we can probably share screen, but I don't have that.
But if you, I know,
Hold on a
I
second.
can
Let
do
me.
the next one and you can upload it in the meantime.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't we do that? Yeah. Okay. Just yeah. Stib will go, and then I'll figure it out. Thanks. Okay. So yours is
That's PFM extensions.
PFM. Okay. Enhancements.
Yeah. Yeah, I am Stig, and I'll present another draft on PFM. So I presented this a few meetings now. So next slide. So I'll be fairly quick about this. I think many of you have seen this already. So this draft does two things. One is the original PFM RFC. It only has a TLV for announcing S, G. If you want to announce any additional information about the flow, there is no easy way of doing that. You could put it in a separate TLV, but how do you associate it with a particular S, G if you do that? So what this proposes is a new TLV that has S, G, but also allows sub TLVs, so you can add any kind of information. Of course, those sub TLVs would have to be defined here, and there could be many different things, but at least it allows that to be done. I had one proposal earlier about having bandwidth, for instance, but it could be any kind of data associated with a flow. The other thing this draft does is a forwarding enhancement. So basically, if you have multiple, say, point-to-point links between two routers, we can forward a PFM message just once. So this works the same same way as BSR forwarding, where the it's like RPF based. So we need some special tweaks to basically do a loose RPF check for the sender to send this message on any of those links, because we don't know which link happens to be the RPF for the receiver. Okay, next slide. So there's a lot of editorial changes trying to make the draft more readable, a lot more text in there. One change that was done was to have separate capabilities for the new TLV and the forwarding, because those are two completely separate enhancements. So you could potentially support one and not the other, or say maybe both might be supported, but the admin only enables one of them. So in this draft, we actually have one hello option with two bits, like two flags. But I'm starting to think now that two separate hello options is actually easier, because you don't need to worry about IANA registries for bit fills or whatever. But that's a minor detail we can discuss further. The other new thing in this draft is with the TLVs. So we want to be backwards compatible. So in the sense that if you have you're forwarding a PFM message that has this new TLV with an SG and some sub TLVs, if you forward that out an interface where we know there is a neighbor that doesn't support it, we can fall back to using the old TLVs. You will actually take this TLV, probably type 2, change it to a type 1, and remove the sub TLVs. Then it will look kind of like the old TLV1, and the old routers can process it. Another way of doing this could have been, or might be, that the first up router sends two messages, one with the old format and one with the new format. The only thing is the first up router can't really know easily if there's some router out there in the network supporting one or the other version, so it would have to be maybe up to the admin to enable that. This fallback is more automatic. Okay, next slide. So would be quite happy to get any input on this. Are there things we should change, do differently? Do you have ideas for what these sub TLVs should be? I guess, yeah, by the way, the flex algo is one use case as well, because you want to say for a particular flow that you should use that particular algorithm. And at least the next steps we are planning is to implement this to see how it works in practice, and maybe improve the specification a bit.
3D 章 ZTE My question is about the type of the draft. The draft is experimental type, right?
Yeah.
But if at least there is two extensions will reference this draft, but the reference to experimental is downref
Right.
reference. Yeah, could you please change it to standard?
Well, yeah. The other thing is the PFM RFC itself is experimental.
Oh,
So so yeah, I mean I would be interested in at some point in time, hopefully making it a standards track document. So just have to see if there's enough interest in the working group.
okay. Thank you.
But yeah, I see what you were saying. So um, at least for the flex algo, I mean, one option would be to only use join attributes in that, or get some permission to say that we can don reference in this particular case. But yeah, we have to think about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any comments? All right. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Good, yeah. I'm just gonna share my screen. Monkamana. I can't load them. So we're just gonna do that. Entire screen. We're just gonna do this. Yeah, we got it.
Good afternoon, Mankamna Misra from Cisco. So this is a short update on one of the other draft, which is PIM backup DR procedures. So I'm going to present on behalf of other authors. Just to give a little bit of background that why we started this work, it was mostly to have some kind of enhancement in PIM where we can achieve faster convergence. And in process of that, initially we did have another draft, which is PIM-DR improvement, which defines some procedures with respect to PIM protocol extension about how exactly we can create a backup DR and then how can we get faster convergence. But while working on those drafts, we realized that there is another way to do that, and that will not require any protocol extension, and that is what was defined in PIM BDR draft. Even though we progressed further and both of the draft got adopted by working group, later stage there were comment that which part should be covered in which draft and whether we want to make both of them as a RFC. So today, what I'm going to present is the scope of this particular draft, that what we want to keep in this draft, and maybe we still make progress in the other draft. Next. So the scope for this draft is going to be very simple in two steps. The first one is how to elect backup DR without doing any PIM extension. And the second one is the sticky DR behavior. Sticky DR behavior is going to, so both of them have been implemented as well. And right now this draft is informational, but to me it looks like we may have to go to standard, because that this sticky DR behavior requires some IANA registry registration for PIM DR value, the priority value. Next. So next step will be we'll be updating the draft within this defined scope, and I think we will have to give reference to the other PIMDR draft, because that is what was the comment last time. That's all. Any question?
Sanizang ZTE, I think the two solution is about two separate perspective of the problem. So we think one solution is sticky and the other one is non-sticky. So we think the operators or the network administrator can choose the solution from different deployment. So we think both of them make sense. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, let's see if Nate's slides are here. I've got a zero comp one. Yeah, come on up, Nate. We'll see which ones.
We get started.
And what's the other one? Would it be? Okay, whatever. I have both of those. They're already loaded. So which one would you prefer to start
The
with?
zero conf one.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So we have 3 documents that were drafted less than a year ago, I think, at this point, and just kind of I've been giving updates at every IETF meeting about that. So this is kind of the update on those. Next slide, please. So basically, what we're doing right now is we're working to get this into a product as a proof of concept, but not actually releasing that product in the form that is in the document. So just kind of a refresher on how this works. You have the random group ID that you're generating, and from that you generate a link scoped IPv6 multicast address, and then use MDNS to publish a PTR record with a for that MAC address that corresponds to that IPv6 multicast address, but using the ethaddr.arpa suffix. So the example down there, which is taken from the document, you have that top line as a random number, then you have the link scope IPv6 multicast address, then the Ethernet multicast address, and then finally the record at the bottom. Next slide, please. So with our proof of concept, we're basically going to change the suffix at the end. So what we've done is we have our own range of multicast addresses that were allocated to Garmin Marine. So that's a pre-allocated range of numbers. It's out there in the IANA document or page for that. And we're basically taking a subset of that range and saying we're going to use this for dynamic allocation. And then the random numbers that we generate will be within that range. So as an example here, that range would get, or that random number might be 2E5. That's the following line would be the MAC address for that. And then the last line would be the corresponding MAC address with the BlueNet suffix instead of the ethaddr.arpa. So the idea here is that they conceivably could coexist on the same network should the standard be adopted and the product not be at a point where we could update it. So the idea here is that we'll take this proof of concept and use it to really prove out the idea and hopefully use that as kind of further evidence that that we should proceed with standardizing the document. Any questions about that? Okay.
I've got a quick comment. How I know this is a bit new to you as far as progressing the drafts, but how far do you think this has progressed? I mean, do you think it's getting mature enough to start thinking about publishing the document and sending it out of the working group and doing like a working group last call? Or do you think there's still a fair amount of work that needs to be done still? And the reason I asked that is Dino last time on his related gap draft is it's in his opinion that that draft is done. So we kind of need to eventually sometime in the near future start doing some working group last calls.
Mm-hmm.
So on this draft, what do you think the maturity is on it?
Yeah, so I think between the 3 documents, definitely the first 2 are pretty mature, ready to go, and both the zeroconf and the gap depend on those. So I think it's kind of natural that we could proceed with that, regardless of how comfortable we are with the third one.
Okay.
The third one I think is, I mean, we have a proof of concept with code out there already that people could experiment with if they want. This proof of concept that we're developing right now is just kind of that extra proof. So I could go either way on that.
So one thing is, we're kind of focused on routing in this working group, and there's a lot of application people out there that are not in this working group. So I think we should at least look into how we can get input from some other working groups in the IETF that know about multicast more from application point of view.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it might be perfectly fine that it's done here in PIM, but at least we want to get input from those people, I think.
Okay, so I think along those lines, the first two documents would be definitely within the wheelhouse of PIM because it's focusing more on what's the problem and what are kind of the groundwork that we need to lay in order to allow the development of dynamic multicast allocation algorithms. And then both GAP and the ZeroConf algorithm are implementations of that. And so I think you're right, the ZeroConf one could definitely use input from more application-minded people. Okay, so now moving on to the next topic. We have basically implemented multicast snooping in one of our networks, and we've noticed some traffic patterns in there that are not optimal. So wanted to kind of bring those problems. We brought those problems to the meeting, discussed it with a number of people, and kind of came up with the latest of what our thinking around on this is. So Joseph Huang, my colleague, he's here as well. David is not here, but Joseph and David and I have been working on this for a while now. Next slide, please. So first question, and this kind of leads into what we discussed with the charter is this the appropriate venue to discuss this? RFC 4541, which is the only RFC out there, it's kind of an informational RFC, and that was developed by the Magma Working Group, and it was released in May 2006. So there's a lot of information that's become available since then, specifically with deployments and stuff, especially what we've learned with our network. And so I think that this is probably the best venue for it, but that's why we're here and not with IEEE or something. Multicast snooping kind of is in this weird layer 2, layer 3 thing, and so my thought is that we would kind of tend more towards IETF as the appropriate venue. So just kind of a reminder, and probably most of you don't need this, but the IGMP and MLD, that's used by hosts to report the multicast group membership to the neighboring multicast routers. And then the two messages that we're focusing mostly on here for this is the query and the report messages. But when we look at how those report messages are used, and specifically within the multicast snooping, they talk about report suppression and how it's important to make sure that you're not distributing those reports to every node on the network, just to the multicast router. Next slide. So what we've seen is that there's problems with the forwarding rules, both in the data path and the control path, that's leading to this. And we'll get to some example networks here that kind of really illustrate the idea here. But these are excerpts from the RFC. So specifically, the highlighted or the bolded text there must also be forwarded to the router ports. That requirement is what leads to the non-optimal traffic distribution. Next slide, please. And then there's also this requirement for the control path, which is how you're distributing the reports here. And it says something, the top line, and then it immediately says the next line. So it's saying forward those membership reports only to those ports where the multicast routers are attached. And then it's saying alternatively, don't forward it to the ports on which hosts are attached, but there's a gap in there, which is, do you forward it to switches or do you not? And so that's something that we think would, clarifying that would be helpful for sure. But it also kind of feeds into maybe gets to the root of the problem that we're seeing here. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an example network here. You've got on the bottom, you've got host 1 source on the left, host 1 destination on the right, and you can see that there's no other source or no other hosts on the network that are needing that traffic. But regardless, it's actually being forwarded up to the querier, S1, which is acting kind of as like the multicast router in this case, but nobody needs it. And that's the problem. That's not really an optimal distribution. On the other hand, with the blue arrows, you got the host 2 source that's going through switch 2, switch 1, and into host 2, the destination. And that's an appropriate you should definitely forward that data up to the switch one in this case, because host two needs that. So what we're seeing here, those two forwarding rules that I mentioned on the previous slides, that's kind of the root of what's causing this. The first one is that, well, the packets must be forwarded to the router, forward onto the router port. So if you don't do that, then you get rid of that red stream of data between S2 and S1. Next slide. So now what you run into is if you're not forwarding the data to the multicast router, the stream from host 2, source to destination, isn't getting forwarded either. So how do you handle that? Well, the reason that that's happening is because the membership reports, as we mentioned before, they're only being forwarded to the multicast router. Once it gets there, they're not being forwarded down to the rest of the network infrastructure. So that becomes the second problem that would need to be addressed. So next slide, please. So if you forward those membership reports to other switches, then you'll see that the data is distributed only to the locations that actually needs that. So that's kind of the two things that we're seeing there. Next slide, please. So the problem there is, well, the data is going up to the multicast router because the multicast router needs to know whether to get that data off the network to somebody who's needing it off the network. So because it no longer has all the data forwarded to them, it would not be able to distribute that traffic. So there's a couple different ways to look at that. One is you could say, well, maybe the multicast router needs to take a more active role in requesting that routable traffic to send a IGMP message or something along those lines. But at the very least, we think that this is a problem worth solving for the layer 2 network only. And so in that case, we could look at it and say, okay, of all the different multicast traffic out there, we could definitely say membership reports for non-routable IP addresses don't need to be forwarded onto the multicast router, but you could still forward those membership reports and all traffic associated with routable multicast data up to the multicast router. So somewhere in there between just solving this for link local or placing requirements on multicast routers to take a more active approach, we think is probably a good solution for some sort of document to maybe do an update to 4541 to kind of explain this and optimize the traffic flow. So next slide, please. So the other issue here is the report suppression. And we talked a little bit before about that gap between, they're saying forward it to multicast routers, don't forward it to hosts. What do we do about switches? So our suggestion here is to not forward those membership reports to ports on which only hosts are attached. Determining that, where the hosts are, that's not really, I mean, it's described a little bit in the 4541 document as far as listening for query or messages, but there may be more protocols that we need to build on top to really paint a bigger picture of what's going on at the layer 2 network there. So next slide, please. All right, so any questions?
So it sounds like the summary is that you're suggesting that 4541 needs to be updated.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yes.
Whether it's a rewrite or, I mean, I don't know the easiest way to do that. What's standard practice for that nowadays? Like a BIS document or what? Is that really the way to go? It's a kind of an old informational draft.
If it is like a small update, you can do like an errata thing, which will be then in the tracking for like a future update in a BIS document. So it's actually,
Right.
yeah, it's more like but then at least it's tracked, But I think formally it's probably going to be like a BIS document, I guess.
But yeah, like a BIS document, I think is kind of more typical if you want to progress it on standards track or something like that. And if you want to work on like errata and fix like everything in the original document. But if it's like some smaller updates, then it could just be an RFC that updates the original RFC.
I think it was a login again not working. So I'm all for standardizing a layer violation, which is why the back then we didn't do it, but also because every vendor was experimenting around how to make this thing best work. So if there is sufficient support in the working group, but I wonder how many are still active, or nobody even remembers how IGMP snooping works. I mean, I'm not sure how much active development is on that part. And certainly, I'd be surprised if even within large companies with many different implementations, there's consistent behavior. So I think that would be against making it more standardized, because that would really create pain and work for existing implementations. And so not sending to the router will not work for link local scope IPv4, because I don't think we've completely eliminated even from IGMP v3. I'm trying to remember, right? So we didn't have this routers must also send IGMP reports for 22400X, right? So if I'm not 100% sure, right? But that was always one of the problems, that the routers traditionally never did that, and I'm not sure if they're correctly doing it now. And what we did in the latest BIS that we're just getting through to RFC editor. So there may be some obstacles. IPv6, I think to remember we did an MLDB2. So those are some obstacles. But yeah, other than that. I think the main issue that you were saying, I think that's a question of how to recognize router ports, right? So um, and and I think maybe there is the useful trick that I was mentioning yesterday, that even an IGMP snooping switch could send out a PIM hello with DR priority 0. I don't want to be DR. I'm not going to forward you any traffic, but I'm a multicast router. Send me all the traffic, right? So that would solve your problem, right? So that may be another update we could do to IGMP snooping, if people revisit that, right? Or any of the other ideas that you had and that could go. So I would stick with informationally, unfortunately, right? Just because of the possible pain for implementers that don't want this. But yeah, if there's enough interest to revisit that document.
Jeffrey from Juniper. I missed some of the discussions on earlier slides. If you could, if we have time, we can go back to them. But if we don't, we can have offline discussion.
Which slide would be good?
Yeah, this go back to the original problem description. So I believe the membership reports should always be sent towards the routers, because the purpose of membership reports is to let the host to the let the routers know that there are receivers there, right? So why did we stop the membership reports at S?
This is kind of a limitation of I mean, it's probably my lack of PowerPoint skill. The membership report gets into the switch one there, and it is processed. It's just not forwarded out to S2.
To me, that seems to be a bug.
And that's kind of what we're seeing too.
Yeah. So
and it might have been in that gap between what is a multicast router versus what is a host, right?
And another thing is sending the traffic to the multicast router, at least in the ASM mode that is required, so that the first hop routers can send out can send out register messages. So
would it be required for non-routable multicast traffic though?
Oh, I mean for the routable multicast.
Right.
So I missed that. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you do the correct thing, which I think even is in the IGMP snooping one, so in the absence of any multicast router, just the networks you're interested in, one switch needs to be the multicast querier, the IGMP querier, and the queries are the ones that make you kind of being a port to be flooded to. So whoever is the query becomes the root of the tree to which everybody sends the traffic upstream, so that the downstream traffic can go from there. Right, the downstream traffic is controlled by the IGMP membership reports you have. Question is, how do you get the upstream traffic that is flooded? And that is because you're flooding to the query.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
So you're saying that there is no router.
Yeah. So those are, you know, most cases only layer 2 switch, multi-switches LANs.
Well, if okay, I'll follow up offline.
Okay, thank you.
One more comment here. So if you want to limit link local packets like scope 2 for v6 or 224/24, one issue could be that the router itself might be interested in some of those link local packets because it's participating in some protocols. It could be NTP or it could be some various protocols. So and also for the link local, not all implementations actually send IGMP reports or MLD reports because they assume that because it's link local, they will just receive it anyway. So need to at least think more about it if it's safe to limit it. But I would say ideally, if the router really wants those link local packets because it has some specific protocol, it would be great if the router sent an IGMP report or MLD report.
Yeah, we agree.
So to answer your question, there's a couple ways to do it. It sounds like, and one is you can just do a pretty short update, draft to update 4541, or you can do a much more involved rewriting of 4541, which we've done with it, and Tortoise is doing that right now with another draft, but that's another option as well. So
yeah, we're kind of flexible. I think if there were other people looking at 4541 and seeing other issues with it, that we could collaborate on a more extensive BIS document. But aside from that, we could just write up what we're focused on specifically and then kind of perfect it from there.
That's probably a good first step. Yeah.
You know, I mean, there were a lot of things we could do, but the industry was very lazy, right? So even just one of the painful problems that we still haven't fully solved, which is, avoiding fallback to IGMP v2 in the presence of older stuff, right? Switches could help with that. But that stuff never got through the industry. So, well, it's unfortunately old industry, old stuff. So it's always hard to figure out how much interest there is.
Yeah, we've been talking about that a lot this week as well. And so that may end up kind of going in organically. So we'll see. Start small and grow it as it needs to, I guess.
Yeah, another thing for that old draft, there were lots of different implementations doing different things, and this was like almost 20 years ago. So maybe now we have some more perspective and we have some ideas what worked, what didn't work, or do we want to recommend certain things, or it might be that we just want to stay neutral. I'm not sure, but yeah.
I actually remember many years ago there was a presentation in PIM working group talking about how the first half router could send some signaling based on the PIM joins it received into the layer 2 source network. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. We are sending this to the first up router because we don't know what the router might want. But potentially, if the first router did know, it could send IGMP reports or something into the layer 2 network, right? But yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Let's see which one.
Yeah, he has two.
IGMP. Is it just this one presentation for both? Yeah, perfect. For both. Perfect.
Hello everyone, this is Luis from Telefonica. I will present this joint work with Itoshi. So I will present on behalf of him. So yeah, we have packed the two drafts in one, just one single presentation because it's the same story. Please, next. So a little bit of background on this. The idea was to extend the capabilities of the proxies for supporting more than one upstream interface. So RFC 4605 basically does not support that multi-homing situation. Just one single upstream interface is supported. So the idea here would be to extend that fact. The motivations for that is that there are so many cases where this could be necessary. Maybe robustness, if you want to have collect the traffic from different trees, or even connection to intranet internet, or even using different technologies for getting the content. Next, please. So we are working now in parallel in two documents, and even there is a third one on the horizon. We have this draft IETF PIM multipath proxy, which is somehow describes the framework for this. We define a number of potential interface configurations for activating one or the other, one of the available upstream interfaces. We are considering different criteria, selecting the upstream interface based on the channel, on the subscriber, that this is a topic that is under review now. I will comment later on, or even based on the priority of the interface. That could be somehow the operator could determine what would be the priority. That would be for the static configuration. Also, another option would be the control-based upstream selection. We have not yet a document on this, but even though we are working on that, and the idea here would be to use a kind of SDN controller or centralized controller for selecting the interface. So that is the framework of the concept, and we are in parallel working in one solution that would be the draft that you can see at the bottom. That is basically a signaling-based solution, so that we are defining some stations for IGMP and MLD for that purpose. So next, please. So we will go now through the framework document, some few updates on that. Next, please. So basically the status, this draft was adopted in before the last IETF meeting. During the adoption process, there was identified a relevant issue that is in relation to this subscriber-based upstream selection. So that could be problematic in situations where the link is shared between the subscribers, because actually we cannot identify clearly the subscriber. So we are working on a solution for this. We are looking at the RFC 9279 for the extensions of the messages, so in such a way that we could somehow play with some signature of associated to the subscriber, leveraging on those stations for basically clearly identifying the subscriber, and then be able to do the selection of the upstream interface based on that. The next version of the draft intends to cover that point. Next, please. So we quickly go through one of the solutions, the one looking for signaling for this. That is this other draft. Next, please. So here, just insisting on the point, there are two aspects to consider for whatever solution. One is the policies for how we select, or what is the rationale for selecting one interface or the other. The subscriber base, as said, is under analysis, but we could select the upstream interface based on the source and the content, or only the content, or only the source, or even the static priorities that we mentioned before. For this dynamic selection, we understand there will be three different signaling situations. One would be to the point of retrieving what content is being, I mean, how many upstream interfaces the proxy has, and also what is the content arriving per each of the upstream interfaces. That would be the first motivation for signaling. The other one would be the request from one or more upstream interfaces, the content. And finally, the checking of the membership. So what subscribers are consuming the different content, so that the proxy can maybe understand, let's say, who is consuming what. For the last part, that will be the signaling situations, we are leveraging on the sections of RFC 9279. We are defining the messages and what could be how this signaling will go. Next, please. So the status of this, we have updated the draft according to the new terminology in the framework document, because at the beginning we were referring to that as support of multiple upstream interfaces. Now we are going towards the terminology of multipath. So we have updated this draft accordingly. We have also considered extensions for IGMP. In the previous version, we were focusing on MLD, so we have generalized to both when possible, and when applicable, we differentiate the terminology for MLD and IEMP. We have also added some security considerations. For instance, the fact that the malicious applications could request content from multiple interfaces, so creating congestion. So this is something that should be prevented. And also some considerations about the frequency of the messages or the number of TLBs on the messages. So yeah, these are things that we need to take care of to avoiding attacks. The next step would be to keep collecting comments. So any comment is more than welcome. I'm preparing a new version of this for 1.2.2, and hopefully having the other document, the third one, that will be the one for the YAM models in 1.2.2 as well. So these were the updates. If there is any question.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're done.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, I think we're done then. Anyone got anything they want to say? Yeah. All right, so I think we should send something on the charter to the mailing list in a few days and do maybe 2 weeks working group last call on the charter, and then we'll hopefully progress with that pretty soon. Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. See you next IETF.
I don't know if RFC is strict on that. I believe Cisco implementations can just you know driver. So I thought that was the case, but if Cisco brings up that, they need to bring it. But yeah,
I think that may be.
anyways, the point I'm trying was what I'm trying to yeah, the worst case it adds to
Yeah.
I don't know if there are using implementations that somehow if there's too many work items, then you know. Some of them maybe are big enough and then you have the traffic is any sure those items for now. I don't know if it could be a potential issue that the short term covers too much work or too many items. But at least
The more you put in there, the more can be distributed.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding, you know.
Yeah.
If you just keep, you know.
Yeah, so one thing we could say is, you know, half levels playtest, you already have documents ready. If they really focus too much, we could do it in the restricted charter, but take care of the ones we already have. And then the secondary charter, we add more of the stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking also. And first do what you think is right. We try our chances. If there's too much pushback, then we can go to plan B. So maybe a documentation, just focus on that, and then do the rest, you know, of more debate, you know, coming back and feedback. I don't want this to stray on, and actually I want to switch out of them if humanly possible before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Sure.
Next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's only 7 more weeks, so
Yeah.
you know.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah, at least I think at least a couple of those bullet points are maybe 4 of them are documents that are right.
No, I'm actually, you know, so I think some of the things that I tried to have last call, they're sitting there.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna touch them anymore until the shopper actually is, you know. And once the shopper is up, then I start like checking, you know, you know, if everybody's put in the review comments and blah 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 kind of thing. So there should not be a big, you know, delay on that spot. And then I can put it into the ISP because I what's gonna happen? It's gonna be the same situation. It's like red flag gone, you know, it's like stuck. And it's very sad to see documents because of procedure.
I know you.
Yeah.
Once in a
Yeah, I think most of our bullet points are precisely